There are moments when a country stops arguing about the policies and starts arguing about itself. And Sir Keir Starmer says we are in such a moment. He pitched it as a fight between patriotic renewal and what he calls the politics of predatory grievance. And he chose a big stage to say it, the global process, or the Global Progress Action Summit in London, with fellow centre-left leaders in the room. On the same day, his government trailed a mandatory digital ID for the right to work. In other words, identity in both senses, literal and hard. Starmer's argument has three parts. The first, the parts on the online and the broadcast ecosystem now runs on Grievance as a business model, and he warns that this corrodes trust and invites performative rage masquerading as patriotism. He explicitly rejects caricatures of London as a lawless wasteland, a jab at transatlantic doom-mongering. Second, he claims social democrats have sometimes been squeamish about saying the obvious on illegal work and border control, hence the new digital ID proposal, free of charge and required to work. The promise is to choke off the shadow economy, cut exploitation, and show that compassion and control can coexist. Of course, we've got to think back to the Blair government and realise that the first real aggressive border controls and immigration controls were performed by the Tony Blair government, not by the Conservative government. And in fact, the Conservative government has been particularly bad at implementing them. Third, he frames the next contest as Labour versus Reform, not Labour versus the Conservatives, on the grounds that the centre-right has withered under Kemi Badenoch and a new populist right has filled the vacuum. That framing is no accident. It's an attempt to choose his opponent, define the choice, and put clear blue water between managerial reform and megaphone rage. So why did he choose to speak out yesterday? Because Reform UK received a popular sugar rush. YouGov's fresh MRP suggests Reform could take around 311 seats in a snap election, short of a formal majority, but large enough to lead a government. And the model could be wrong, but it is loud enough to change behaviour. And when the polling gods serve thunder, politicians start buying umbrellas. Of course, the problem is that Mr Farage and Reform have peaked rather early, and in all probability there will be a sag within a year or so. The plan, the digital ID proposal, in plain terms, the plan is that by the end of the Parliament, every adult must hold a digital identity to pass right-to-work checks. It could sit in a government wallet, in an app, and doesn't require you to carry a physical card. Ministers also talk up easier access to services. Critics reply that this creates a tempting national honeypot for hackers and a new vector for exclusion unless non-digital routes are first class, not second class. Both things can be true. A scheme can be useful and risky at the same time. The idea isn't new. Britain flirted with ID cards under Tony Blair. Others from Estonia to Australia now run digital identity with varying success. The UK has also had data breaches. So the test is not the sales pitch, it's the architecture, the oversight, the redress when things go wrong. As one security expert put it, centralised stores can be an enormous target. If your front door is Fort Knox, but your back door is plywood, the burglars will oblige. And, but nevertheless, if we have a digital ID, that puts us on a par with great countries like Afghanistan. Reform's riposte is simple and resonant. Starmer is continuing a legacy of high taxes and high migration, they say, and Brit card insults the freedom of the law-abiding. Well, Kemi Badenoch calls it a gimmick. The rhetoric writes itself. The policy will need precise drafting, independent assurance, and a cast-iron offline alternative for those without smartphones or with low literacy, or it will bleed political capital. Meanwhile, the cultural weather worsens. 2 weeks ago, a far-right rally in London enjoyed a video cameo from Elon Musk, complete with apocalyptic lines about violence coming, which is as subtle as a fire alarm in a library. Starmer cites that atmosphere as proof that language can curdle into menace, and he is right to worry. Democracies rot from the inside long before they fall from the outside. Under the showmanship, what really is at stake are a series of things, and we should ask 4 questions. Can a state combine control with consent? Border enforcement without due process is ugly, and laxity without credibility is not serious. A digital ID could tighten labour enforcement and reduce exploitation if it is accurate, proportional, and limited by law. Get any of those wrong and you turn the temperature up on exactly the grievance you claim to cool. Voters don't need reward announcements. They want the reward. The reward should be the outcome. If small boat crossings fall and illegal employment is measurably higher, the government gains purchase. If not, reform's charge of managerial waffle sticks. The YouGov model is a warning, not a prophecy, but warnings concentrate the mind. The scheme itself needs independent cryptographic audits, data minimization in law, criminal penalties for misuse, and a simple crowd-funded legal pathway for citizens to sue the state when the state errs. Without that, we will swap queuing at the HR desk for queuing at the ombudsman. And the ombudsman, in my experience at the moment, aren't working very efficiently. There is a version of patriotism that fixes potholes and passports, not just waving flags. If Starmer wants to reclaim national pride from the angriest voices, he must start delivering brass tacks competence. That is less stirring than a rally, but that is how countries actually change. And Britain has a long tradition of arguing about the Constitution while waiting for the plumber. We are brilliant at the metaphysics of sovereignty and less brilliant at getting a GP appointment. Reform thrives in that gap. They sell speed and certainty, and the government sells systems and sequencing. You can see the dilemma. One side offers a raw, the other offers a workflow that doesn't quite function. There's also a law of political thermodynamics. Heat without light eventually burns the cook. The Unite the Kingdom rally supplied heat. It didn't offer a plan to staff the border force or digitize casework. If the debate becomes who can shout louder about danger, we all lose our hearing. If it becomes who can make the rules work on a wet Tuesday in Wigan, then there is hope. Digital ID is a narrow instrument for right to work. It's not a domestic passport. It will be unlawful to demand it for anything else unless Parliament says so in primary legislation. Put that in the bill, engrave it, frame it. Create an independent data guardian with subpoena power, published audit logs, and require breach disclosure in hours, not weeks. Guarantee a gold standard offline route for the 8.5 million adults with low literacy or no digital access. Do not make them supplicants at a digital altar. Fund it properly or don't do it at all. We've seen what happens with the NHS ID with the COVID rubbish. Publish quarterly metrics on illegal work enforcement. Prosecute the exploiters and support the trafficked workers. Take the fight to the bad bosses, not just the desperate workers. And keep calling out fantasy left and right, but pair every rebuke with a fix. The nation will forgive severity if it's matched by fairness. And if not this, then what? If you reject digital ID, will you expand workplace raids, mandate biometric visas, or penalize firms that undercut wages via cash work? If so, how do you defend civil liberties while doing it? If not, what is your instrument that is both sharp and just? Poll leads are not policies, and the Home Office is not something that will actually survive many more demands on it, because it can't do what it's supposed to do at the moment. So yes, there is a battle for the soul of the UK, but souls are not saved by speeches alone. They are saved by institutions that work, by a civic style that treats anger as a symptom, not a sacrament. And Starmer has set the frame. Reform has the wind. The rest of us have a choice. We can be the nation that mistakes noise for strength, or we can be the country that fixes the pipes and the paperwork and then gets back to arguing about Shakespeare, football, or whether Jaffa cakes are biscuits. and I know which one sounds more like home to me.